Hey guys, I am T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, you make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make an off-the-shoulder v-neck top. This modern make is big on the slouch, sporting a balloony bat-ish design, clean back loop ribbing, and a slimming body band for shape without sacrificing comfort. Best of both worlds. Speaking of, if you're looking for some of the best crochet designs in the world, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of the most modern crochet tutorials and patterns online, with new patterns weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 400 grams of yarn, and that's 750 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. Now there is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us your favorite time to crochet, morning or night. I get most of my work done really early in the morning. It's super peaceful and the perfect weather always. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 6mm hook and start off by making a chain that reaches from the top of our shoulder down to about 2 inches past our belly button, because we want the top portion of this top to scrunch. So I need a total of 16 inches or 41 centimeters, so that's going to be a chain of 58 for me, and I already have my first shoulder portion finished, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we are all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch. That's our turning chain, and now we're going to yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, and we're going to half double crochet into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook. So we're going to pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Let's do that again. Yarn over, into that following chain, insert, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Now that our row 1 is complete, we're going to get started on our row 2, which is a back loop half double crochet row. So from here, just chain 2 and flip our work. And all we're going to do is yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet. We're going to find that last stitch from our previous row and insert our hook underneath that back loop only. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Let's do that again. Yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, pull through, and pull through all 3. And continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And that is basically it for the shoulder portion. We're all going to be doing back loop half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases until we have a shoulder portion that can reach starting 2 inches past the tip of our shoulder over to mid collarbone. I'll meet you back once we have an even number of rows, and then we can get started on the neckline. I am back, and my shoulder portion is all finished up. I have a total of 10 rows, and that's just about 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. And now from here, we're going to get started on our neckline. Now the next thing we're going to do is insert our stitch marker into a stitch that's nearest to our collarbone. So I've actually inserted my stitch marker into the 7th stitch from the top that is opposite from where our hook is, and that's just about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. Now from here, to get started on our first decrease row for our neckline, we're going to be putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making my way all the way up until we have 3 stitches left right before our stitch marker. So we are back, and we have 1, 2, 3 stitches left before our stitch marker, so now let's do our decrease of 3. So start with the yarn over, insert your hook into that 3rd to last back loop, pull through, into that second to last back loop, pull through, and into that last back loop, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 5 of those loops, and that is our decrease. Now getting started on our following row, that's going to start with a decrease as well. So chain 2 and flip our work. So just to do the decrease again as a refresher, we're all going to yarn over, insert our hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, and into the next, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook again, yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops, and that's basically it. From here, we're going to be putting 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches for this row. Then from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So our following row is going to be 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch while doing a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets into the last 3 stitches of the row. And the row after that is going to start with a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets and 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of the stitches. We're just going to continue to repeat those 2 rows until this portion that we have can reach over from 2 inches past the tip of our shoulder all the way over to about mid-chest after an odd number row. So I am back. The decrease portion of my neckline is all finished. I have a total of 21 rows. My width is just about 9 inches or 22 centimeters. And now we're all going to do our middle row, and our middle row is not going to have any increases or decreases. So since we all should have ended along the bottom, let's all chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Now after the middle row, we're going to get started on mirroring this side, but on the other side. So since we're all going to end up along the bottom after our middle row, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one so that we can increase back up for the other side of our neckline. So we are back. We have just finished up our middle row, and we have gotten started on our following increase row for our neckline. So we put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. And all we're going to do on this side is do an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets because we did a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets on this side. So into that last available stitch, we're just going to be inserting with 3 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over into that last back loop with 1 half double, with 2, and then with a 3rd half double. So there is 1, 2, 3 half double crochets into that last back loop. And we're going to be increasing into every row. So just to get started on the following row, chain 2 and flip your work. So now that we flipped our work, we're going to start this row off with an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets as well. That is our increase of 3 back loop half doubles. And from here, put 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So our following row is going to be a back loop half double crochet into every stitch while doing an increase of 3 back loop half doubles into the last stitch. And the row after that is going to start with an increase of 3 back loop half doubles and then 1 back loop half double into every stitch. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows that we have along the decrease side of our neckline, but we are not going to be including that middle row. Once we have the amount of rows that we need, I will meet you guys back so we can get started on the shoulder. So I am back and I have just finished up the increase portion of my neckline. I now have a total of 33 rows. My width is now 14.5 inches or 37 centimeters, and now we're going to get started on our shoulder. So first things first, we all should have ended along the top or the increase end. So what we're going to do from here is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped for the beginning of our neckline. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 7 stitches here. So along this side, I'm going to make a chain of 7. And once we have our chain, let's block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And we're all going to yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, and insert your hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, with a half double. And from here, all we're going to do is put 1 half double crochet into every chain. Once we reach the body portion, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch so we can match the ribbing. And then at the end of the row, just chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And we're going to continue to repeat that row with no increases and no decreases for the same amount of shoulder rows that we have when we started off our piece. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. am back and the entirety of my front panel is finished. I have a total of 43 rows. My width is roughly 18.5 inches or 47 centimeters, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut after my last row. Now the next thing we're going to do is our back panel, but it's going to be super duper simple, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. So when it comes to doing the back panel, all we're going to do is make the same chain that we made when we got started with our front panel. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain of 58. So starting my back panel, I will also make a chain 58. And then all we're going to do is do back loop half double crochet rows for the same amount of total rows that we have for our front panel. So no increases and no decreases for 43 rows for me. Now I already have my back panel all finished up. Go ahead and get yours done, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam the shoulders together. So once we have both our front and back panel all finished, the next thing we're going to do is seam our shoulders. So first things first, we're going to be placing the front panel on top of the back panel, and we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then from there, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now we're going to do a single crochet row, working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So we're going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So getting the first one started, this is my first side row right here. So I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop, and then also insert my hook into that top loop within the back panel, so that first side row as well. There we go. And if you're like me, you don't want to weave in your tail ends later, just place your tail ends over your hook, and we're going to single crochet around everything. And that is our first stitch. Into our following side row, we're going to be inserting with 2 single crochets. So into that top loop, insert into the front panel, into that same top loop within the back panel, so this one for me, insert and single crochet. And since this is our second side row, we're going to be putting another single crochet into that same top loop. Now the second one should be a little bit easier because everything should be gathered. Go ahead and insert your yarn. Go ahead and insert your hook into both the front and the back panel, and single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row until we don't have any more side rows left to work into within the front panel. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side, and then I will meet you back. So we are back. We have just finished up seaming our shoulders on both sides. Now we're ready to seam our sides. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seams that we did for the shoulders is along the outside. And then we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into the stitch where we want the width of the base of our sleeve to be, because keeping in mind this is going to be slightly a batwing. So I wanted the base of my sleeve to be just about 10 inches or 25 centimeters. So I inserted my stitch marker into the 35th stitch from the top. Now, as a really quick tip, I inserted my stitch marker right at about mid-chest. If you would like a more dramatic sleeve, you can insert your stitch marker lower, or if you would like a less dramatic sleeve, insert your stitch marker higher. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook. We're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're going to do a single crochet seam, putting 1 single crochet in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So find that next available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook. Next available stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and if you're like me, you still don't want to weave in your tail ends, place that tail end over your hook, and single crochet around everything. Let's do this again. Into the next stitch into the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and single. And continue doing this until we reach our stitch marker. When we do, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you guys back once we finish up the other side. So we have just finished up seaming our entire piece, and now we're ready to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we are now going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning all of the seams that we have are now along the inside. And then we're going to insert our same hook into the stitch that's nearest to our side seam. Then we're all going to start by making a chain 2, and that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just need it for the height. And what we're going to do is start with a decrease row. So for everyone, no matter what size we're making, we're all going to start by putting 1 half double crochet into each of the next 10 stitches. So just yarn over, find that first available stitch and insert with a half double, and I will meet you back when we have a total of 10. We have our 10 half double crochets. Now we're going to do a decrease. So yarn over, insert your hook into that following stitch, pull through, into the stitch after that one, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. That is our decrease of 2 half double crochets, and we're going to continue to repeat this until we make our way all the way around. So again, 10 half double crochets, into the 11th and 12th, another decrease, and continue to repeat that, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left for this row, I will meet you back. So we have made our way all the way around with our first sleeve row. I'm going to show you how we're going to connect every row now. So since we don't have any more stitches left to work into, all we're going to do is count up those 2 chains that we made when we started this row. Here's 1, here's 2, slip stitch into that second chain to close off this row. And that's it. From here, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and for everyone, no matter what size we're making, we're going to have 3 back loop half double crochet rows in a row with no increases and no decreases. So what I like to do is insert my stitch marker into the row that I do my decreases in, just to make it a little bit easier to keep track. So after we chain 2, like I said, flip your work, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, following row, another back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and then into the next as well, making sure that we're flipping after every row to make sure that we keep up with the ribbing for the body. Once we have our rows 1, 2, 3, 4 finished up, I'll meet you guys back to get started on a row 5, which is another decrease row, but it's actually the same exact thing that we did for our row 1. Alright, so we are back. We should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows finished. Our following decrease row is going to be exactly the same as the first one, so just as a refresher, we're going to have 10 back loop half double crochets with a decrease of 2 into the 11th and 12th stitch, and then repeat. So another 10 back loop half doubles, decrease, and then that all the way around. After that decrease row, we will be having 3 back loop half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases after that, and then a decrease row again. All we're going to do is continue to do a repeat of these 4 rows until we get the sleeve length that reaches about where our elbow is when the shoulder is on, because this will be able to be worn on or off the shoulder. And I will meet you guys back right after we finish up a decrease row so that we can taper it in just a little bit more so that we can do our cuff afterwards. Alright, so we are back. The length that I have is about right where my elbow is, and I have a total of 17 rows, and this length is 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to be doing more decrease rows, the same one that we did before, but just a little bit more frequently so that I can taper in so we can get ready to do our cuff. Now this portion is going to be completely up to you depending on how wide you inserted your stitch marker for the base of your sleeve. So for this next portion, you guys can decrease into every row, into every other, which is what I'm going to be doing, or you can actually continue to do it into every third, fourth, whatever you guys need to make sure that your sleeve tapers down to your wrist. So since we already know how to do this, I'm actually just going to talk you guys through it. So what I'm going to do, like I said, is decrease into every other row. So since the last row that we all should have done was a decrease row, I'm going to do a half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases, a decrease row after that, so the same decreases that we did together, the 10 back loop half double crochets, then a decrease, and then repeat for the rest of the row, a half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases, and then a decrease row. So I'm going to be continuing to decrease into every other row until I get the length of the sleeve that I want, and then I will meet you guys back so we can get started on our cuff. I am back with the entirety of my sleeve. I have a total of 36 rows, and this length is now 17 inches or 43 centimeters, and now we're going to get started on our cuff. So from where we're at, all we're going to do is make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I would like for my cuff to be a little bit longer, so I started by making a chain of 15, and that's roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Once we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and into the chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert, and when we have both of those loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through both. That is our first slip stitch. Let's do another one. Into that next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops on our hook. And that's it. We're going to continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, remembering not to tug too tightly, otherwise the falling row can be a little too tight to work into. Now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to slip stitch it into the base. So start by finding that next available stitch. All we're going to do is insert our hook, yarn over, and pull through everything with a slip stitch, and that slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it. Then we need to work our way up to the falling row, so slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now we're going to be doing back loop slip stitches. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, not those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert our hook in through that back loop, then yarn over, and again gently pull through both of those loops. Again, into that next stitch, into that back loop, and pull through everything, and continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain one, flip our work, and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the base once more. We are back, and we should all have 1, 2, 3 rows nearly finished. Now we're going to slip stitch it into the base the same way we just did. So as a refresher, find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch it into there to close off our row 3 or any odd number row, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and continue with one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. We're going to continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches into the base left to work into. When we don't, I will meet you back so we can seam everything together. So now that we have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, we're now going to seam it all together. So this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, making it look like another back loop slip stitch row. So we're going to make sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're all going to yarn over, pull through everything, and then we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert into that front loop only. So this is my first stitch right here. I'm going to insert into that front loop, or the loop that's closest to you, and then into the back panel we're going to find that next available stitch and insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from you. When we have those 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Let's do that again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop only. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop only. Yarn over and pull through everything, and we're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that both of our sleeves and cuffs are all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is the bottom. So first things first, making sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to be inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now all we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. So just do the first one. This is my first side row right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with 1 single crochet, into the next with another single crochet. That's basically it. We're going to continue this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, slip stitch into that chain space, but right before we move on to the length of our bottom, we do want to make sure that this single crochet row isn't too tight, because this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this bottom is going to be able to stretch. So once when the single crochet row is finished, try on our piece. If the single crochet row is a little too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip, and then I will meet you back. So our single crochet row along the bottom is all finished up, and now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our bottom to be. Now you can make this short, making this a crop top. You can make this a little bit longer, so a longer bottom band, or completely full length. That's completely up to you. I wanted mine to be a little bit longer than a crop top, so I made a chain of 20, and that's roughly 4.5 inches or 13 centimeters. Once we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and we're all going to yarn over and do a half double crochet row. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a half double, and since we are experts at half double crochets now, put 1 half double crochet into every chain. So now that we put 1 half double crochet into every stitch, we're going to connect it into the base. But we're going to need to make sure that we're all working to the left or clockwise, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, because the ribbing that we're going to do for the bottom is not reversible. So once when everything is flipped right side out, we're going to count up the next 2 available stitches. So here's 1, here's 2. We're going to slip stitch into that second stitch, and now our row 1 is finished. That slip stitch still doesn't count as a stitch. Now our following row is going to be a slip stitch row. So just slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of this row, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I will meet you back at the base once more. We are back, and we should all have 1, 2, 3 rows nearly finished, and now we're going to slip stitch it into the base again as a refresher. So connecting our half double crochet row into the base, we're all going to count up 1, 2 stitches, and slip stitch into that second stitch into the base. And then to work our way up to the following row, which is a slip stitch row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base. When we don't, I will meet you back so we can seam it all together. So I am back. I have just made my way all the way around with my back loop half double, back loop slip stitch rows for my bottom, and now we're going to seam it all up. And we are going to be doing an outside loop slip stitch seam just like how we did for the cuffs, so let's make sure that our work is still flipped right side out. We're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, yarn over, and pull through everything. And since we already know how to do this, let's just do the first one. Into the front panel, let's insert our hook in through that front loop. Into the back panel, insert your hook in through that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook, and that's it. Continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So we are back. We have just finished up seaming the bottom, and now we're going to finish up this piece with our collar. So first things first, let's make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, and we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the neckline, along the back panel. And all we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. Once we reach the front panel, we are going to have some regular stitches to work into, so just 1 single crochet into there, and we're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row until we make our way all the way around. So now that we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now going to do our collar. So we're all just going to start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our collar to be. Now I don't want mine to be too big, I actually want mine to be pretty tiny, roughly about 1 inch or 1 centimeter. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 4. And now all we're going to do from here is back loop slip stitch rows, so pretty much the same way that we did the cuffs. So block off that last chain, do a chain 1, into that chain that we blocked off or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch and put 1 slip stitch into every chain until we reach the base, making sure that we aren't tugging too tightly. We have put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now let's connect it into the base. So find that next stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Our row 1 is complete, and just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and that's basically it. We are going to continue with our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam it together again. Alright, so we are back, and I have made my way all the way around with my back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it all together. So we're going to be making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitches of both the front and the back panel. Next, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook, and this is going to be another outside loop slip stitch seam. So just to do the first one, we're going to find that first stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop, first stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And that's it. We're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, and that is it. We are all done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch y'all in the next one. Bye!